ladies, I've been looking for volunteers to help me open up Terry Carter's treasure vaults of the Ancient Historical Research Foundation and the Treasure Hunter's Hideout. Any brave soul willing to risk their lives for a share of what's behind the vault doors, welcome aboard. The rest of you scallywags best be leaving my sight.
My name is Shawn Davies, and you've seen, that's me, so now you got a face to the name, and I'm with AHRF, so we're the ones that are sponsoring this tonight. We're so excited to have Dale Bascom with us. I know that many, if not all of you, have seen Dale present before, and he does a great job. He's been around a long time. But before I get into turn time over to Dale, I've got a couple of things that I'd just like to go over real quick. As I mentioned, I'm with the AHRF, and I wanted to give just a little history of who we are, because I don't know if anybody really knows how we started or how we came about. But like everybody here in this room, we probably crossed each other's paths a lot when we're out in the field, and that's exactly how it starts for us. I started to notice that my paths were starting to cross with others on a real regular basis. And by 2004, it was so regular that we thought, maybe it's time we ought to do something. Get a little more organized so we're not double tracking and doubling up our work. And in 2005, we got our act together and put together the AHRF. So we're an official group now, we're a foundation. We're a 501c3, and our sole interest is in the research and the study of the ancients and their history. So anything that falls within that area is definitely an interest to all of us. When we first started, it was just a handful of us, and as time went on, we grew, and this last year, we realized that some of the projects were really starting to take off and go. And we just didn't have the resources anymore to handle what we're doing. So it's grown beyond the means of the people who founded the foundation. And I'd like to give a little credit to my grandfather. He's the one that got me started. When I was small, excuse me, he'd always drag me along on his excursions, and still the curiosity to find out what's on the other side of the hill. Of course, in his time, that was the entertainment, to find out what was on the other side of the hill. Didn't have the internet or movies or satellites or anything else. But I owe it all to him. He taught me that many hands make little work. He grew up on a farm, and all the days of his life he was a farmer. And that's the very first one that I remember learning. That's stuck in my mind. And we thought that now would be a good time to expand the foundation. In September of last year, it was unanimous that we'd open it up to everybody like us that wanted to join with us and had the love for the work, to get out in the field and find out what's over the hill. And that's what this is all about. And this is our first meeting as an open group in 2014, and we're really excited to have you all here. If you haven't, I think everybody here has joined the AHRF as a member on the forum. If there is anybody here that hasn't, it's really super simple to do. All you gotta do is go to ahrffoundation.com, fill out the form, and you're in. Pretty much, that's all there is to it. So we hope that if you haven't done so already, you'll do that. And you'll check back on the website often, because that's where we put a lot of our information about what we're working on. And we'd like to get everybody active and involved and working with us on the things we have to do. And also, please, take the time to spread this amongst your circle of influence. Those people that have the same interest as you, I know that there's probably a lot of people that are not here tonight that probably could be. And it'd be fantastic to be able to fill a room like this and fill it if possible. So, enough with my diatribe. Thank you for coming. I'm glad I recognize some faces. I've met some people here, put faces to names for the first time, and it's really a good feeling to see you here. We're really excited to have Dale with us tonight, and he's got a great presentation. I'm going to dispel a rumor right now, and Dale can correct me if I'm wrong. This is not a prelude to another book, right? Well, at the moment it's not. It's not a prelude to a book. But it's going to be a fantastic presentation tonight. Also, we're not supposed to be exchanging any kind of funds here at the room, but Dale does have books, and if you wanted to get a book of his, he's the author of Following the Legends. If you don't have one already, I think you have some with you. Is that right? Yeah, get with him after. There's also a couple other books, possibly. Dan Lowe might have one or two. Get with him after if you got those. If you do not, it's not even.
Dan's looks like. So it's real good reading.
But make sure you take care of all that, or do it afterwards. Don't let's not do it here this time. We don't want to get kicked out. We want to hear Dale first. All right. So, with that being said, I'd like to turn the time over to Dale. I think everybody knows Dale pretty much. It doesn't need much of an introduction. He'll be talking to us in Symbols of Time, ancient and modern symbols, and on the show.
Thanks, Shawn. Tonight. I was a little nervous, but you've made me feel right at home, and I appreciate that. I've learned a lot from quite a few of you. You know who you are. Do we need it louder?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Also, there's a volume control on the wall right over there.
Yeah, we're up all the way.
Okay. All right. I'll just talk close like that. As much as possible, I want to be an open book. I want to be transparent to you. There's no need of reinventing the wheel, is there? So if I've got something I've studied that you can deem information from, I'd be glad to share it with you. The only case I won't share something is if somebody's given me something in confidence, because I won't break, friendships that way. Okay?
There you go. You're 2 or 3 ahead now.
Thanks. Well, it's just kind of packed up, isn't it? Okay, we see symbols all around us all the time, don't we? What are some symbols we see? Stop signs. Excellent. That's right. No matter which language you speak, you pretty much know what a stop sign is. Why are symbols important?
Information.
Yeah. Okay, I just need to briefly let you know my background. In '79, I was working with a guy that was a distant cousin of Dale Rhoads. He says, well, if you like mines and mysteries and stuff like that, you've got to meet my cousin. I says, okay. So I met Gail, bought his book, and a little bit later, got to meet Ed Twitchell. Through my work arrangement, his son-in-law, was Lynn, who helped me get my job at BYU. So I got to meet Ed Twitchell. He knows a lot because he was really good friends with a lot of Indians. Okay. Chris Vera is a Spanish friend of mine from Venezuela. He knew both Aaron and the bishop. These are nicknames he gave two guys. The bishop was from Provo and Aaron was from Orem. By way of the bishop, that's how we get the silver bar. By way of Aaron, that's how we get the copper map. Okay, speaking of symbols, this is a thunderbird or an eagle. In many Native American cultures, the eagle is important and even sacred. Any ideas why? Very good. Flies from there to the heavens. That's exactly right. Also, something I'll point out here is that, see this wing is more dominant than the other side, and also there's a little white rock right here. Sometimes the Spanish will also do this. They'll put something in place that's out of place. It's so obvious, but yet you have to really, it's an attention getter, if you will. Okay? Something to keep in mind. Well, that dominant arm or wing is pointing towards this hill right here. Looks like a pyramid, doesn't it? I have it on good authority from two separate sources that there used to be artifacts in this mound. Most of them have been taken, probably all of them. They were of ancient origin. Okay, this is a map. It came from Ed. It's part of my inheritance from Ed. It's Hayden Peak, the Hayden Peak quadrangle. And it's a big, a large, very large map, 1 to 24,000 scale, I think. You notice at the top it says the best white map. Obviously, when this map was rolled up, somebody wrote on the outside the best white map, and that's why it's inverted. So it means the very best white man map. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we can learn from this. By the way, you can't see it very well, I apologize. The original is about 40 inches by 50 inches. Pretty big, so I didn't want to break it, you know. But it says right here, this line cutting through Kidney Lake is 262.5. Now, I don't know what the Spaniards used in their cartography, what they used for their reference point and their longitudes, but that's what it says, and Ed wrote in there that that's the old baseline on the old Spanish maps. Then these lines, he's got them intersecting certain peaks, like Kings Peak North, Kings Peak South, Thomas, and Gilbert Peak. And then he says that these lines continue off the page, off this map, to other areas. And what it's saying is Upper Star, Inca Maya, landmark pyramids, and cabin location up Cabin Creek, and so on. So there's a lot of old history here. I've yet to check out very much that's on this map. There's, like I say, lots of information. You can see the copy I've got up here afterwards if you'd like. Now, when you're out exploring, a lot of times you'll find symbols and things that you have no idea what they mean. Let's take this, for example, this old looking alphabet. Here's another example in that same area, up by the Green River. I've asked several BYU professors. Nobody seems to know exactly what it means. Now, at first I was very critical of the professors. I thought, come on, give me a break, you know? Surely you have some kind of speculation or guess or something. But the more I study languages, the more I realize that's not the reputation that's on the line. What it is there's so many variations, so many things. Languages change in time, for example. We'll be talking about that a little later. So even if they had an idea of what it meant, most likely they don't know the time frame that it's from. Now, most of you have seen mystery glyphs in Utah. This is my son Creston standing next to this panel down by Nephi, just east of Nephi on the hill. You've seen probably other panels or other areas. Terry Carter keeps saying he's going to write a book on this stuff, but I haven't seen it yet. So hopefully he will one of these days. I'd like to see his explanation of it. If you go to YouTube and type in mystery glyphs, this is what it'll come up with, is this panel here. This one's up by Ogden. There's a BYU professor that said that he thinks a guy by the name of Joseph Goodman created these petroglyphs back in the 1860s and 70s. I don't know. Other people say they're fake. I don't know. Jose Davila claimed that they were ancient writings, Egyptian, and that the panel in Fillmore leads you to a rich mine as well as underground records. They're buried, of course. And he spent a lifetime, well, quite a bit of time, at least several summers, trying to excavate and get to these records. But it never worked out. Three guys were even killed in the process. What about their ancient Utah history? Most of you have heard about the copper map. This is a picture of it. And I've got a laminated copy up here. I didn't bring the actual map. It's too fragile. The center area is blurred out, but you can see other things on this. The way the story goes is that Aaron's relative, probably his grandfather, borrowed this from the church along with two other maps, and for some reason didn't return them. It says Desert Assay Office, and an abbreviation for the Great Salt Lake City Desert Assay Office. Thomas Rhoads Map, second mine near Rhodes Valley, Moon Lake Desert Territory by James M. Barlow, 1863, and the name of the church. James M. Barlow was the silversmith for the church back then. There are some ancient symbols on the copper map. I didn't know what they were, so I needed some help. And I believe that they exist somewhere on a rock or something semi-permanent near Moon Lake. In Gail Rhodes' book, his black book, The Rest of the Story, he says that Charles Foote also found these symbols around Moon Lake. So in 2003, I met a guy by the name of Stan Johnson, extremely well educated, knows several Indian languages as well as the Egyptian languages. And I asked him if he would look at the map and the symbols there on it, and he said yes. Now, one thing that I mentioned before is that languages change. Okay, most of you, I'm sure, have at least heard of the Book of Mormon and the gold plates from which had the inscriptions on them, from which Joseph Smith translated and became the Book of Mormon. Well, what Stan says about the symbols on the copper map, in other words, in real life out by Moon Lake, is that they're Reformed Egyptian. So they've changed again. So they're at a later time period than the Book of Mormon inhabitants. Okay, so if you put all these symbols together, it was fascinating, by the way, to get to watch Stan as he translated each of these symbols. I tell you, that guy's got a gift. He's fantastic with these things. It forms a chiasmus. And in other words, chiasmus is a rhetorical inversion of the second of two parallel structures. Here's an example. You forget what you want to remember, and you remember what you want to forget. Simply put. So, putting them all together, it goes like this. Something sacred is being held beneath, and a chamber below is being held. Something will come forth from a chamber, like birth. That which is held will come forth. Isn't that cool? So I consider the Moon Lake area a sacred area, because I think that there are records or something else, or something else kept there. Now I'm going to go out on a limb here, make a bold statement. I believe the Spaniards were here from the 1600s on, from the early 1600s on. Most people roll their eyes if you go out in public and say that, you know. I even believe they were here from the late 1500s, but I have a harder time proving that. Most of you realize that Mel Fisher was here, 1993-94. I have a photograph over here of him standing next to George Thompson. My book wasn't out at the time. My book came out in 07, so there's no reason why he should have known about me. He wasn't going to look me up. But anyway, George and Bill Blazard and some others were able to go with Mel and look for things. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit of insider information, if you will. I met an Indian, became good friends with him a couple of years ago. And he was there when Mel Fisher came to town. In fact, Mel Fisher slapped a gold bar on the table, and my friend recognized the map on the backside of that gold bar. As you recall, Mel Fisher was the one that found the Atocha site, recovered the gold and silver bars and other treasures there. So Mel Fisher found a gold bar at the Atocha site, which sank in 1622, that came from Utah. We started to put the puzzle together. Yeah, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. So I went with my friend. Just a second. And we went on Indian property. Now you get away with that when you're with an Indian. So I knew I couldn't get out, metal detect. But he wanted to find out if the treasure was still intact. So I said, okay. So this little tool is called a PPL. Bob Fitzgerald makes these. He lives up in Reedsport, Oregon. There's a video we've done on YouTube about this happening with Ken. It's my brother-in-law, Ken. This is what works for me. I can find gold with this. Now, it's funny because this also acts just like a regular metal detector. It'll occasionally find steel. It'll occasionally find hot rocks, and so on. So you still have a challenge. But in any case, my friend and I went down into Rock Creek on Indian property and tried out the PPL. Sure enough, I got a hit. He says, this is where you need to try it. I tried it, got a hit. He says, can I try that? He got all excited. So I handed it to him, even though he was driving. He tried it with one hand. Sure enough, he got a hit right where I had. So I said, yep, the treasure's still there. And Mel Fisher could have probably gotten permission from the Indians to get that treasure, but he only wanted to give them 10%. They didn't like that idea. Okay, now let's go to some other hard evidence, if you will. Oh, by the way, my friend is writing a book. Yes?
I'm sorry, I'm a little lost on Mel Fisher and what the treasure was.
Okay. A Spanish galleon sank off the Florida Keys in 1622. According to records, when I talked to Eugene Lyon, he says that the records say that all that treasure came from Peru and South America on that shipment. Somehow, either the manifest is incorrect or something. There was a fortune, small fortune found in that ship. Gold and silver bars, coins, and other things. Did that answer your question?
And there was a map on the back of one of those bars?
Yes, that's correct. Mel Fisher brought a gold bar to Utah. On the back side was a map, and my friend recognized that location. It was a treasure map. Kind of different, isn't it?
Aren't you going to tell him how much was in that ship?
You remember the figures?
$500 million.
Yep, a lot.
With a beat.
Okay, this, my friend Chris, when Aaron had left the room for a minute, he was visiting with him one day, and he had the leather map out from 1741. This is the Peralta map, by the way, the Peralta family map. You know Peraltas are in the treasure. Superstition Mountains, ring a bell? Anyway, Chris got out a piece of paper and started drawing a portion of that map. Now this, I'd love to see this leather map for real. It's about 5 feet long, rolls out, and when it's rolled up, it slides into a silver cylinder, with leather caps and Spanish writing on the outside. It's in color, by the way. Colors for different things. So he drew that part of it and compared, if you will, to the 1851-53 Ronaldo map. So about 100 years later, the cartography is very similar. This is the Duchesne River, and over there the same, Grand Alley Lake, and so on. So they either had the same cartographer, or maybe they were using this Ronaldo map as their reference. Now I'm going to tell you just a little bit different version of this, the story that you don't very often hear. You've heard the version that in Gail's book about when there was a massacre down in Chicken Creek, and Brigham Young sent Thomas Rhoads, they said, down to find what had happened. Well, from the story that I get, the bishop's wife's ancestor, probably a great-great-grandfather, went down and found that massacre site and found the metal box and opened it, and there were 2 maps in there. This is one of those maps. This is literally a copy, a Xerox copy. Stuck that in the copy machine and let me have that copy. That's as close as we're going to get to the original Ronaldo 1851 map right there. You can see holes in it from where it's been folded and so on. Pretty cool, huh? Here's another map that we purchased from a copy of it from the bishop. Most of the time Chris would give $25 and I would pitch in $25, and a lot of those maps are in my book. So you get quite a bargain. Come right down to it. This is the Nunez map, 1771. Dan Lowe's done a lot of research on this thing. Now, as we've been dating trees, a lot of them the scars date back 250 years, which is right in this time frame. This is another thing I want to point out is that Spanish cartography. There's longitude 263. I'd love to know what their reference point was. So this is Camas Valley here, and Whyte Peak, and this is a fortification. This is where the bishop found, this is where the silver bar supposedly came from. There was a massacre at the fort. The bishop found gold and silver bars, a Spanish spur, cannonball, and some other things. This is another map. I just wanted to point out that the Uinta Mountains were once called the Winty Mountains. Another Spanish map. This one talks about, I know a little bit of Spanish, but it talks about the Winty Mountains and the high mesa of the Winties, and it talks about the many lakes. It also mentions the mineral of gold and silver in abundance in the crystallized rock. So apparently it was in quartz. I recognize it as Kidney Lake. Could be wrong, and I've gone up there looking for this, but I've not found it yet. Okay, huge breakthrough in time. My sister Jerry Ann and her husband Ken, that's with us, went to Florida Keys and went to the Mel Fisher Museum back in 2010. They brought back some information to me, and one of their photographs highly intrigued me. See this capital E with the diamond above it? Down here for an explanation it says, obliterated shipper's or receiver's mark from an earlier transaction. Well, I had thought I'd seen that symbol before. I looked on my silver bar and it's very similar. There's an N added to this one, and it has an extra leg, like it's an E with a cap above it, but it's an E with a diamond. Let me explain something. This started me down a path of, I think, quite a bit of learning. There's the two side by side, by the way. I found out a lot about siglas. Siglas are family symbols. It's kind of like having a brand for your cattle. Now, the sigla, being a family symbol, was passed from the father to the youngest son. The other sons got a variation of that symbol. That have an extra line added here or there. From the original 84 siglas used in Portugal, that's where about as far back as we can track them, although they could go back further than that. There are thousands that have come about, or at least hundreds. Jerry, would you read that for us, please?
In ancient times, the family sigla was easily and quickly recognized by those in the community. Hundreds of different marks have derived from 84 original siglas. Historically, siglas were used in fishing communities. There was a sigla for the fisherman, another for the boat owner, and still another used for the fish caught. When a fish was caught in a net, it belonged to the owner of the net and was thus marked with the sigla of the net owner and was delivered to him. Okay, this is all well and good, but how does this apply to bars or anything else? It appears that every time a bar changed hands, it bore the marks of those transactions. With the change in ownership came a new family sigla.
Oops, went too far. Go back. Okay, some authors believe that this is an expedition symbol, thank you, from a certain century. I have a different opinion. I think this is a symbol or a sigla or an expedition symbol representing a certain family. Gary Taylor, who some of you remember, he's deceased now, he once told me when he saw this, he said, I've seen a book that has all of those siglas in it and which family belonged to which sigla. Wouldn't that be cool to find that book? I haven't found it yet. There is a book over here about silver bars and from one of the wreck sites, the shipwreck sites, and they have quite a few of the family siglas. But I haven't seen one for all of these. And this is an example over on the right of another map we bought from the bishop, which has the expedition symbol, and that's in Daniels Canyon, by the way. So it's important for us to date these trees and figure out how old the scars are. So what we've been doing is we've been core dating using one core here, one example here, and the other sample taken around the back side, or one of the sides, doesn't matter which one, but not here in this overgrown scar area. Dan talks about this symbol in his new book, by the way.
Oops.
If you take the sample from right here where it's overgrown, the scar, it's going to be inaccurate. We date this scar about 250 years ago. It's another pointer tree. The Spanish had incredible ways of marking their trails, marking their mines, and so on.
Yeah. You said that where the new growth is, if you count the rings in the new growth, it doesn't give it accurate.
Right, because it's actually doubled over. So you get an inaccurate count. That's correct.
Okay, can I?
Sure.
Okay. So when we were up there last summer, we found a tree up above, and it had a gigantic box. And someone had sawn the tree in half and fallen over. But what's cool, so you could read,
Yeah.
so from where the box was into the new growth, you could count it, and there was about 215 to 220 years, or rings.
Yes.
So but that would not have been correct then?
It may have been okay, but it may not have been.
Okay.
You always run the risk of doubling over. Good question. Now Dan experimented. This is a simple granny knot in this tree limb. And he experimented and found out that the tree limb could be no larger than 3/4 of an inch in diameter when this was done. Otherwise the limb would have broken. Did I get that right, Ian?
Yep, dates to 1771,
There you go.
same as the Nunez map.
There are so many symbols out there that the Spanish have left that I can't count all the ways. This is one of the ways they used to do things. There's a smelter up in Dry Fork, and I took one of the rocks. The smelter was in pieces anyway. I'm extremely conservative, by the way. I love to preserve history. Even if I find a cat face on the ground and don't pick it up, I'll kick myself, but I didn't. Anyway, so this smelter was all in pieces. I had one of the rocks assayed just from the gloss that was on the rock, the glaze. And it ran real high in silver. So this was apparently a silver mine. Right next to the smelter is this tree. And you can see the chalk marks in it. You put your back towards that and look across the canyon, and that's where the mine is. At least that's what the PPL says, where the mine is. Usually they made the symbol like this, a chalk mark, with a piece of wood sticking out of it. And they can get very ornate, or they can be extremely subtle. A friend of mine, a Spanish guy, asked him if he would help him find his mine up in Dry Fork. He said, okay. Well, they went to where they found the last symbols, and then they couldn't find any more symbols. Well, they had to look and look and look like a fine-tooth comb, you know. And they actually found a piece of mahogany that had been driven into a pine tree. And it was the pointer pointing the way to the mine. Isn't that incredible? They went to great lengths. The S symbol, the double S. Gail in his book said that this actually represents two different trails going around the ledges. Now, if you have a theory about what something represents, go with your gut. Try it out. See if it works. See if it actually pans out. I did that one day. I came down the canyon and found a 5-direction tree. That was so cool. I got to go back there and get a GPS on it one of these days for posterity. It literally, that 5-direction tree had marks, different lengths, different heights on the tree, on an old pine tree. So that gave you the direction to go and told you how long the trail was. It was fascinating, lovely. Now, the bishop said that usually if you follow the crosses, you'll find the cemeteries. He said more often follow the eagle symbols. Anybody recognize that one? Conquistador. Spanish hat, so on. You can see his face over on this side. Okay, so he's pointing to the right, so we went around the hill to the right, and in the next canyon over, we found an open pit quarry. I think it used to be a Spanish mine, and somebody found it, realized how rich it was, and went ahead and mined it. So do the Spanish symbols lead to something? Okay. In my last presentation, somebody asked me, well, if these rocks have been altered, where's the proof? So I was really excited to find this rock. I saw this a couple summers ago. A guy up in northern Utah invited me up there. And right in here, it was really obvious in person, not quite as obvious on film, that this rock had been chipped away. Now, if you'll notice, there's a lower heart and an upper heart, so to speak. There are two treasures in this area. He's been one above the other. He's found the upper treasure, and it's actually the smaller of the two treasures. It was 2 gold bars. As he was getting closer, he was finding more and more hearts. Now, let me let you in on a little secret. The Spanish make huge monuments and huge eye-catching things when you're a long distance away from the treasure or the mine. As you get closer and closer and closer, the marks get smaller and smaller and smaller. Now, in some cases, when you get into the corral or the area where the treasure is, they'll actually throw you off and they'll give you false clues. But in this case, this was fairly direct and straightforward. And this was really cool. Let's go back here just for a second. These heart symbols were almost everywhere on the ground. I just couldn't believe how much time they had taken to carve these hearts and to just place them on the ground at random. Like I say, he found a small treasure. It was 2 gold bars. They were back in a crevice. You could barely see them with his flashlight. He eventually got his way back into there and pulled them out. And there was a little tiny heart about 1.5 inches tall with those 2 gold bars. That meant you found it, you know. So the hearts led you right to it. This old Spanish adage goes like this: the Spaniard's soul yearns for God, but his heart forever yearns for gold. Okay, sometimes clues are very subtle. Does anybody see a heart in that picture? It's what we call an incised heart. This is actually from Wyoming, this picture is. It's right there. By the way, word to the wise, take lots of pictures when you're out there. You may not get back there anytime soon, and it's incredible the things you can find later by looking through your pictures. Okay, so what animal is that one? Anybody recognize it as a dog? So here's its tongue sticking out, there's its mouth, there's its eye, whole head right there. I thought this was kind of fake, so I walked over there and I tried to pull out this rock for its eye as a pointer. I couldn't get it out, I couldn't budge it. Now I could have gotten a rock or a hammer or something and destroyed it, but that wasn't my objective. That has been purposely put there as a pointer, as well as the tongue. So follow that direction and you'll find the mine or the treasure. Now, what if you're out and about and you see another animal shape? What's this one? Panther? Lion? You betcha. Pretty obvious, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to teach you guys something that I just recently learned. Oh, that's an excellent idea, son. Okay, here's the eye, the nose, there's the mouth. There's a big boulder right here in front of his mouth. He's looking, well, he's not looking because his eye is closed, but he's facing this direction. Everybody see that one? Okay. There's a scripture in the Bible, and as you know, Spanish were Christians, so they used the Bible as their reference. We all agree upon that? Okay. Revelations 4, 6 through 8. Cynthia, would you read that for us, please?
Surrounding this throne were 24 other thrones, on which were seated 24 elders. They were clothed in white garments and had crowns of gold on their heads. From the throne came flashes of lightning and pearls of thunder. Before it burned 7 flaming torches, the 7 spirits of God. The floor around the throne was like a sea of glass that was crystal clear. At the very center, around the throne itself, stood 4 living creatures covered with eyes front and back. The first creature resembled a lion, the second an ox, the third had the face of a man, while the fourth looked like an eagle in flight. Each of these creatures had 6 wings and eyes.
Thank you. Interesting, huh? From about 140 AD on, the 4 Gospels have been referred to as these creatures. So it goes Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew is either a person or an angel. Mark is the lion. The ox is over here. Luke, and John is the eagle. Now, according to Charles Kenworthy, and I've got some of his books over here, you can refer to it if you'd like. I was doing some studying recently on this because I was wanting to know, what does the lion mean? Okay, so Kenworthy says if you see a map, Spanish map, and it has one of these creatures on it, there'll be some numbers next to that head or next to that creature. And you use that number as a reference and go back to that book. So, just for example, if it was Matthew 4 and 5, you would go to that chapter and that verse, it would tell you the distance and the direction to go. Now, what do you do if you're out and you don't have a map and you just stumble across something like that? Oh, by the way, there they are again, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So this is Mark, but all I have is just a lion head. Now this is where you're going to have to teach me because I don't know yet. I haven't gotten that far. I just recently learned this stuff and I've yet to apply it. I don't have a Spanish map that has that lion head on it or shows Lower Canyon. This is out in the West Desert, by the way. So we're going to have to do it the hard way and reverse engineer it probably and see if we can figure it out. Now, we're talking symbols. Symbols, symbols, symbols. Who sees something else in that picture? Okay. Could be. Does anybody see anything down here? Okay, so what I see is a mouth, nose, an eye here, and an eye on the far side, and this is his forehead. Now remember, symbolism is everything with the Spaniards. The guy has his eyes open or closed? Closed. What does that probably mean? Death. You're right. Either sleep or death. It probably means there's a death trap in this area. So if you're going to recover this treasure, you better be on your toes. Any questions so far?
So it's looking above, what's the reference? He's looking above to the heavens, right? So it's a reference from the Spanish as a reference to God.
Yeah, probably, that's an idea. I hadn't thought of that. Reverence to God. You want to be right?
Then you've got the 7, and then the ears basically talk about topography when you go the distance of the one boulder in front of the house.
Okay. All right, we're going to have to go out and check it out.
I've been to this place several times.
Right. Okay, Dan Lowe was nice enough to share this picture with me. I had a sheep herder tell me one day that my book was all fake. He said, the monuments in there are not made by the Spaniards. He said, the sheep herders made them all. Okay. I listened to him patiently, you know. But give me an idea of what this would take if you were to do this. I think it would be beyond board. I think you'd have to have a passion for making a rock monument if you were a sheep herder. Had nothing to do with your time. You realize how these are balanced and so on? This is not the first one that I've seen that's very elaborate. Here's another one. This one's about 10 feet tall. And also there's a grave next to it. What appears to be a grave. I don't think a sheep herder made that. Okay, I could be wrong, but I don't think so. I think the Spaniards made it. I'm trying to remember the exact distance that I was reading about recently. If I remember right, it's about 10 miles. They try to make the large monuments visible at 10 miles. 8.5 leagues. Something to that effect. So you could see this one with your spotting scope, your spyglass, if you're a Spaniard, from a long ways away. This would get you close to the right area. And you'd find more clues and more monuments or more symbols closer in. As you're on your way to your mine or your... Now why did they... Yes?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That bit of lion,
Yes.
who first discovered that? And did anybody find anything following the nose?
Okay, so I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you that Kenworthy had a lot more money than I did, and a lot more resources than I do. He had people working in the archives both in Spain and in Mexico City. And rumor has it he had lots and lots and lots of papers on this kind of stuff. He had found documentation. Now, from what I understand, reading the books and so on, the cartographers and the other people with the Spanish miners would actually make marks so that the next expedition going in would be able to find the mine or the treasure. The king was very adamant that things had to be done a certain way. They had to be done by certain rules. Does that help you?
Yeah.
And just put this one in here to point out what we affectionately call a cat face. Usually we find a mine within a short distance walking past the cat face. This one's on stone, most of them are on trees. Turns out that some of them were made by my distant cousin, Cheryl Abbott. So, and he said it was a symbol that the Indians had given him. Before he, anyway, that's what he said. Some of you have seen this sun symbol up in Diamond Fork. Now, I want you to keep in mind that sometimes the symbols that you find are going to be maps. I'd like you to think of these. What do we have up in Diamond Fork? We have 6 waters, no? over here at the 6th water, we have an indentation right there. Now, I don't know if this is ancient or more Spanish era. I couldn't tell you. But in any case, I think that this represents a mine on the 6th water. Now, I haven't checked it out yet, but a good friend of mine, a guy I used to work with, used to go up there swimming at the hot pots all the time up in Diamond Fork. And he said you'd walk right by a little ridge that had a Spanish cairn on it, in other words, a rock monument. So it could be in that area. So this is not just the only thing that's up there. Hey, what does the turtle mean? Okay, you can roll your eyes, it's okay. We call it Archeoastronomy. I could spend a whole evening just talking about this topic. A friend of mine invited me up to northern Utah last spring, and it was close to the time of the spring equinox. And he wanted me to see certain things that I could only see at that time of the year. I thought, really, you know? I was not a believer. I got to tell you. But it was incredible, and as we saw the sun come up and the shadows and so on, yeah, there was like a whole story unfolding before us. It was incredible. And we found a lot of other things that he showed me that was really neat, which backed up his story, okay? So don't take it for granted. Look for these little subtle things. One day, a couple of Indian friends invited me out on the reservation. And they wanted me to see some monuments and some other things out there. Now, by the way, that took some work to do that. In fact, I think this rock is slightly dislodged. It looks like there was a notch right there for that to fit into. And right next to it are a whole bunch of big boulders, and you think, well, the average person would just walk past those and not think anything of it. But actually, these are sighting holes. So you'd probably go in that direction to get to the mine. And this one probably tells you the distance, probably 3 leagues. This one's actually up in Wyoming, and they've taken the time to put this big boulder on top of these other rocks, and it's a pointer. I think it points to the left. Now, sometimes symbols are all in the eye of the beholder. An Indian told my friend that this is an all-seeing eye. Can any of you see that all-seeing eye? This is up by Moon Lake, by the way. Okay, so I'll try and point it out as best I can here. This is the upper lid, and the lower lid goes right here, out like that. And then there's the pupil part of the eye is right in here. Now, it's pointing to the left. So if you walk to the left, you look at this, you can see this old trail, and you can hike up that trail, and it tops out, and you find this depression. Well, according to the Indian, some of his buddies got together and they covered up this mine. Well, it's been a fair length of time, would you say, for these small quakies to grow up through there. It wasn't just yesterday. And as you walk down the ridge line there, you'll see depression after depression. I think the Spaniards knew where the vein was, but they were just checking it as they were going down the hill to see how good it was. It's up on the west side, and they're like, oh, also, by the way, looking at the photograph, it looks like a heart to me next to that. I don't know if it's supposed to be, but that's what it looks like. Now, one day up on Mosby Mountain, we ran into Randy Lewis and Mick Norton. And they were looking for a mine, and so they said, hey, you want to come with us? And we said, sure. So the way the story goes is you're supposed to be able to go up this hill, this steep hill, and go into this cave and look through the hole at the far end of the cave. Can you see that hole back there? And you're supposed to be able to see a mine from through that hole. So we climbed up there and we looked through and we got our bearings. We could see this old dead tree over here, so that's what we were going to head toward. We slid back down the hill and went over close to this dead tree, and there's a depression in the ground. I think it could have been an old mine. it's hard to say whether it's, it's a rich one or not. I've seen quite a few mines in my day, but I think most of the good ones are all covered up and you don't even know they're there. Well disguised. Okay, this is the Guardian. This is on Indian property. Should I tell them the story, Ken? Okay, so this, you can see this Guardian has an ear right there, and a nose, and a mouth, and so on. And you can go any direction around this rock outcropping, and you can see faces all the way around it. So this Guardian's doing a good job. And there's where the mine is, right there. We don't usually go on Indian property without an Indian with us. But Ken and I couldn't resist one day here about 4 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
And we wanted to take some pictures of this mine and see what it was all about. So we parked over on the Forest Service side and walked over, kind of scurrying, over to this, took pictures. Then on the way back, you can see this low-lying brush. I fell down and happened to look right beside me, and there was a white antenna sticking up about that high up above the brush. Oh no, Ken, we're had. So we hightailed it back to the truck and took off as fast as we could go. By the way, I work with a guy that actually installs cameras and microphones on Indian property. He's hired to do that, so it does exist. You could get caught one of these days. We got lucky that day. Are the Spanish still checking on their mines? And what about the vein markers? We've talked about a lot of directional markers so far, but we haven't talked much about vein markers. Vein markers, I've seen a post out in the field. The guy I was with, who knew, because he had doused it and done some other electronic equipment testing, said that marks a vein. Another guy I was with showed me a couple of white rocks, and he said that marks a vein. So, very subtle sometimes. Now this is a really cool one. It's right beside the highway. As you're going into Vernal, somebody has taken the time to drill holes in this great big boulder. And it actually, they've drilled holes 2 different directions. There are 2 veins that intersect right there, according to my PPL. Okay? You can roll your eyes, it's okay. But you got to go with these clues, There's something to them. They start adding up. So looking at it from a different direction. And this was very impressive to me. Right below that big boulder, short distance of dirt, and then you've got this next rock. Now if you look at it closely, this hole here lines up with the holes on the big boulder that we just slid down. And there is a little gully between, just right ahead of us. So what it's telling me is that the vein continues past the gully. Any questions? You guys are being quiet. Okay, up by Moonlake, this tree no longer is there, by the way. Los Platamina, the silver mine, with a cross next to it. You can tell back in 04, I think it was, 04, 05, when I first saw that. It was dead then. I should have taken the time to take off the symbols, but I'm too conservative. That other tree we just saw is right here in the background. And then this one says, Rula Garcia, looking for the lost mine of my ancestors, 1971 through 88. No luck, I quit. So I think the Spanish are here, checking on the mines that their ancestors told them about, left maps to, who knows what. Okay, so as we were up there walking around and testing and just taking it all in and trying to figure out the mystery and the riddles, this became quite intriguing to me. You see these 4 rows, rocks in a row. This one has been in the ground longer than these. I think the ancestor put this one here to mark the vein. My PPL says there's a gold vein there. And this rock over here tells you how wide the vein is. Then Rula Garcia probably was good with dowsing. And some people don't even need dowsing rods. Some people have gifts for orchards that way. I think Rula Garcia was able to douse this and said, yes, this is the vein, and this is how wide it is, and he put these 4 rocks in there after his ancestor put that one there. That's my opinion. Now, also in that same area, and I've heard of this happening before, but I've never seen it, so I was really excited to see this. This tree root, pine tree root, has been notched. They were marking the vein. I know you don't believe me, that's okay. I love this stuff. It's right here at the base of this tree. The PPL says there's a vein there. And I never could figure out what this tree, what the symbol meant on this tree until it finally dawned on me. The old proverbial light came on. So this is just down the hill from where that vein is. So you go up the hill, in a gully or a swale, you will find a vein. Everybody see that? What do you think? And it was just as plain as day when I finally figured that out. You look back up the hill, and there's the tree with the root notched on it. These rocks probably marked the vein once upon a time, but they've been rearranged. Loggers have been in there and stuff like that. Anyway, in closing, I want to remind you that the important things are not to quit your day job and to have fun out there and to cherish your friends and enjoy your time. Thanks for this evening.
So we have a few minutes here. If anybody has any questions, Dale has agreed to answer.
Go ahead.
Question for you, Dale. Can you tell me more about the bishop? Is he still alive? How did you know?
The bishop and Aaron, I've heard, are both dead. Now we, after they died, we were able to purchase the copper map and the silver bar, which I have up here on display. The bishop had the silver bar and turned down $10,000 once upon a time. I bought it for a lot less than that. Believe me, I wouldn't have it. And the copper map we purchased from Aaron's son after he passed away. Got the copper map in 2000 and the silver bar in 2002. So they've been gone for quite a while. Now, I always had a dream of giving the copper map back to the church, because that's really who it belongs to. But I haven't done that yet. I may still someday. Other questions? I hope you've enjoyed it. Yes?
Do you ever have take out groups?
I hadn't thought about it, but I guess I could. Sure, would you like to?
I'd love to.
Okay. Email me. I've got a card up here. You can email me. We'll see if we can get together. Yes?
Has anybody dug any of these mines and found anything?
That's really an excellent question. You mean some of the mines?
Yes.
Some of these holes that
Some
we
of these
keep
places
finding?
that you say there's a mine there, has anybody proved it?
Ken, have we proved it yet?
No.
We haven't spent our time in that direction. I love the research and the mystery, and I guess it's a little harder to dig and find the time. You'd probably have to dig down quite a ways to find the rich stuff, is my guess. I do know a guy who's a good friend of mine from way back, up in Rock Creek. He actually had a mining claim. They went down about 60 feet. He had gone down that far. There were 2 shafts. One was an old Spanish shaft, and one was even older. They figured it was an old Nephi shaft. And once in a while, they would break through between the 2. And one day he had a vision of what was there, and it was beautiful gold. And but it wasn't to be, is what the vision told him. It wasn't the right time. So he gave it up. He doesn't know if his children or grandchildren would have had too much money and not appreciated what they had. Who knows? Also, the bishop. I don't actually have a picture of that with me here, and the picture's pretty poor. But when Chris was with the bishop one day, he took a picture of quartz with wire gold running through it. is from the sacred mine that's up at Paradise Peak. The picture didn't turn out very good, but you can tell that's what it is gold. So occasionally we do see the rich stuff. It is out there. I believe strongly it is. Other questions? Yes?
What's your opinion of the treasure in South Fork?
South Fork of Rock Creek?
Of Rock Creek?
Weaver River.
Excuse me.
Okay, you're talking about the Black Bull treasure?
Yeah.
The one that Schaefer goes looking for?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's there or not. I've got it to Whyte Peak, but I've never been on the South Fork of the Weaver. There's supposed to be some good gold up on the Weaver River. George Thompson, I got to meet him a couple of times. He showed me the Spanish midden that had gold caked in the bottom of it. That was so beautiful, butter yellow gold. And he showed me some pieces of gold, and one of them was really jagged quartz with big gold running through it. And he said that was from the Weaver River. And I asked him where, but of course he wouldn't tell me. He said he was going back there the next year. I don't know if he did anything with it or not. Other questions? Yes?
Are the bases, are they looking towards the treasure, or is that a trail marker to keep going up the trail?
Good question. In other words, how close are you? Is that what you're trying to ask?
How close, or which direction, yes.
Yes. With the lion symbol, I don't know how close we are, but I think the way I interpret that symbol, you saw the boulder that was right next to the mouth. I believe that that's just a short distance. In other words, it's like the lion that spit out the rock, so you only go a short distance to find the treasure. That's the way I interpret it. Excellent questions. Anything else? Thanks so much. Yes, go ahead.
What's your opinion of the copper map as far as what does it lead you to? What's the purpose of it?
Okay. It actually, it belonged to the church once upon a time, and it says that that's where one of the locations where Thomas Rhoads got gold. Now, Aaron, by using the copper map, was actually able to go to that same mine. And he described it to Chris. You go down a ladder, and then you've got to work your way amongst some boulders and rocks. And he said some of them look like coal. I don't know why, but that's what he said. And you go back in and you find an elliptical ore body. And the gold was solid, and it was 3/4 of an inch thick down the right-hand side of that body, that ore body. And that's what he chipped away and brought out. Maybe that, I understand that's where the church got some of its gold. Yes, Dan?
The chicken pole ladder's still sitting up there.
Yeah, that's right. West of Moon Lake, there's still the chicken ladder there.
Not much left of it.
That's true. Evan, I've enjoyed the evening. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. I just got a couple things before they dismiss. We have another lecture coming up next month. It's on February 11th, and it's going to be at the Murray City Library. Basically the same kind of conditions. Dr. Steve Lacey will be presenting at that one. He's going to speak to us on the last of the bandit riders. He's got some very interesting information on the last days of Butch Cassidy. He's also the owner of the Footprints at the Past Museum. He's told us he's going to bring some artifacts with him. It's going to be a really good presentation. So it's on the website right now. You can go out there and sign up for it. It's the exact same process that you went through to get here. Please spread the word, share it with everybody else. And if you haven't gone out to the website lately, we're updating it constantly. There's lots of information out there. Just have to search for it. And also, we utilize the forum real heavily for projects we're working on and for commentary. So go out to the forum as well. Don't just go to the website. Thanks.
Okay.